United 93, do you still hear Cleveland?
The radio transmissions from controllers at the Cleveland Center on 9/11 trying to raise United Flight 93 are still haunting to hear.
United 93, do you hear Cleveland Center?
Clear skies and a slight breeze greeted Bill Keaton on the morning of September 11th as he arrived to begin his shift as an air traffic controller.
I remember working for probably an hour and a half, maybe hour and 45 minutes. That was generally my custom, and I just took a break.
You took a break about what time?
Probably 8:30, 8:45.
At 8:46, the first plane crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center in New York. Bill Keaton walked into the cafeteria where people were already watching television.
And they're talking about a plane that went into the World Trade Center.
The first plane.
The first plane. And as I was sitting there talking to people, that's when the second plane hit the World Trade Center.
And then you thought?
Well, obviously this was not just an accident.
When Bill returned from his break that morning, a short time after 9 o'clock, aware that both planes had hit the Twin Towers in New York, he replaced a controller that was working a piece of airspace known as Area 6. Over the course of the next hour, United Flight 93 would enter into and then crash in Area 6.
The thing unusual about United 93, it was coming towards my airspace and there was no altitude information.
That's because at 9:41, the terrorists had turned off the plane's transponder. That meant controllers were not seeing something like this, the detail of tracking information they normally see. The terrorists also tried to keep the passengers at bay. This is the voice of hijacker Ziad Jarrah aboard Flight 93.
Hi, the captain. I would like to always remain seated. We are all aboard and we are going to back to the airport and we have our demand, so please remain quiet.
But they weren't headed back to the Newark airport. Flight 93 had been bound for San Francisco, but the hijackers took control of the plane somewhere over northeast Ohio near Cleveland, then turned the plane just west of the city.
As I'm sitting there watching that, a controller runs into our area, runs up to my sector, points to the plane and says, "Do not let anybody within 20 miles of that airplane."
Bill Keaton could no longer tell how high the plane was, but he could still track Flight 93's location on radar.
He was on a track down what's called J518. It's basically an airway that's restricted to airplanes leaving Washington going to the northwest.
So he's on a one-way street in the air out of Washington going the wrong way heading back towards the nation's capital.
That's a good way of putting it.
And you try to raise him, what?
I think I remember trying to call a couple of times and not getting an answer.
Bill says he was unaware that someone in the Oberlin Center had already suggested getting military aircraft involved. But as Bill soon found out by talking to a pilot of a military cargo plane, it didn't matter.
When United 93 disappeared from my scope, I asked him, "Did you see anything suspicious over at 10 or 11 o'clock, maybe 10 to 20 miles away?" And the pilot reported seeing a large cloud of black smoke billowing through the clouds.
As we now know, the passengers rushed the cockpit after learning through cell phone calls that other hijacked planes had been crashed into buildings.
United 93, United 93, do you hear Cleveland?
The terrorists slammed Flight 93 into the ground in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, killing everyone on board. And Bill Keaton was watching Flight 93 leave his radar screen.
You really feel helpless because it's your job to keep the airways safe.
Bill said he wouldn't decide until the last minute whether to attend a commemorative service at the new national park at Shanksville on September 11th, but says he has put the day behind him.
If you let something like that stay in the forefront, then it just eats you up.
I'm going to say it's not as easy for you to compartmentalize as you might say, because it's difficult for you to decide whether to go to Shanksville.
You may have a point. I'm not sure.
Are we safer today in the skies?
There have been things that have been put in place and certain changes, and I can't go into details about those. As a country, are we safer? Your guess is as good as mine.
Bill Scheel, Fox 8 News.